You're listening to the Downshift podcast, taking you trackside for all things motorsport. We're four mates from Melbourne breaking down the races, the drama, and everything in between, all with a little banter and a lot of passion. If you love motorsport and cars as much as we do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always on the grid with us. And if you really want to join the team, leave us a 5-star review and support the show through Patreon for exclusive content and bonus perks. So it's lights out, drop the clutch, and let's get racing. And welcome to the Downshift as four mates talk about Formula One and decide to try and throw me off as I go into the intro for this episode. Today we're going to do the preview of the Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka. We've been racing here since 1987, and as normal, it's around 300 kilometres around the track, doing 53 laps. The lap record is held by Lewis Hamilton with 1 minute 30.983. It was done back in 2019. This is a really technical track, a really exciting track, which was originally developed by Honda as a test track. Best places to watch. This is the only F1 track that actually has a crossover, so the 130R crossover, and then also through the S curves where you're seeing the real display of the downforce on the cars and the opportunity to have some wheel-to-wheel tussles as well. So fantastic race, fantastic track. Schwags, why don't you kick us off in regards to as we get into Suzuka?
Okay, nice. Yeah, look, I just had a quick look at this track. I'm not familiar with my racetrack, so I'm learning like some people are. Interesting looking track. I was asking before whether it was just the only track with a crossover, and we've determined that it is, apart from, what do we say, Abu Dhabi, but that's a pit lane crossover. Underpass, whatever, yeah. So looking like a very compact track on the map, but yeah, those S's look really interesting. And yeah, no, it looks like I'll be interested to see this race. Be good.
Huffy,
I don't know anything about the tarmac, so I gotta tap out there. That's about my extent of my knowledge about that track. I think what I do know is I believe that the surface is going to be black, and there'll be some white lines at the side, and perhaps some red and white ripple strips, maybe some green and white ones on the side as well. Just I think they're keeping that the same.
Fair chance. I think Dan, I have to get you over on the iRacing simulator so you can have a go of the track, because
it might be a thing where I have to come and drive a track before I actually watch a race. Might be a bit more interesting.
Well, that way you know how the drivers feel then as they go through those chicanes and the S-bends and the downforce on the car, and you'll have more of an appreciation for the control.
I'll drive the Red Bull because I've heard that's a really easy car to drive.
Yep.
So says Lukey.
We'll put all the driving aids on for you so you can have the racing line and the automatic gear shift and brake assist. Yeah.
I just hit the autopilot now.
No, but this is an absolute driver's track. Like, the drivers love this circuit. It's especially in a high downforce car, it is just a mega track to drive because there's only two low speed corners. There's a hairpin and the chicane at the end of the lap. Every other corner is at least a medium speed corner. Some corners, like turn one, to watch the cars go into turn one at speed is just phenomenal. And through the S's, any downforce car feels great through there. So belter of a track to race on. It will really, really work well for cars that have good aero package and are well balanced, and cars look after their tyres. So I think McLaren should be strong here, and I think some of the other teams will be quite good here too.
Well, that was going to be my question, Happy. Out of the aero packages that we've seen so far in the first two races, which teams do you feel will be stronger? Take McLaren to the side because obviously we think they're going to be strong on almost every track. Out of the other teams, which ones do you feel will have the aero package to suit this track in particular?
Yeah, good question, actually. It's probably...
Thanks.
It's hard to answer because I know you've got to really go on at the moment is, there were teams that had some reasonable performances last round at Shanghai, and Melbourne you got to sort of write off because it was wet for most of the race, and Melbourne's not a high downforce sort of circuit. But the teams that didn't complain about car balance, I would think Mercedes didn't look too bad. Lewis and Charles sort of complained a bit about balance. So did Max, said it was very difficult to drive. So I would think the Mercedes should do well. And I think Williams have really improved their aero on that car over the last couple of years. They used to be not the most aero efficient car a few years back. They would be very fast down the straights because they couldn't they just didn't have a great aero downforce package. They were high speed down the straights, but not great through corners. I think the Williams will actually do fairly well. I'll be keen to see how they go. But I think Mercedes will be strong. And if Ferrari can fix up one or two little issues with their car that we can chat about in a minute, they might be pretty good here as well.
Actually, it's worth going into that and speaking about the Ferrari challenges that have been reported. So happy if you wanted to kick that off, that'd be great.
I read from an Italian source earlier today that apparently Ferrari was some of their issues over the last two races with tyre wear and rear grip in particular was due to excessive flexing in the gearbox of the car. So the gearbox sits at the rear of the car. The whole rear suspension geometry is bolted to that gearbox. So when the car is accelerating out of a corner or going around a corner, the wheels will load up and you'll get camber and so on the tyres. And if the gearbox itself flexes to the body of the car, that can affect the operation of that geometry in the suspension. So it hasn't been 100% ideal for them. And apparently they're working on ways to fix that. You can't really make changes to components during a year once they're sort of homologated, but one way you can do it is for safety. So if they can say that these parts are not safe because the car might have an accident, something might break, they can implement fixes to stiffen up that gearbox. So I don't know when they'll have these fixes in place. It could be this round or not. I don't know. Haven't seen the news. But once they get that sorted, it sounds like the Ferrari will get a little step up in performance and the rear of that car in particular will operate a lot better.
Can't they just use a stiffer plank?
Yeah, well, I think that contributed to the old plank wear. Yeah, they need like a hardwood rather than a pine skid block under the car. Yeah. So
another coat of lacquer, I think.
0.5 millimeters of lacquer, but that stiffening definitely in regards to it is, and you're going to see that in regards to the balance of the car. Correct me if I'm wrong, Happy. It will mean that the car will be a little bit more oversteery.
Usually a stiffer rear end would be, but it also depends on the diff and so on. But it just means that they won't have to make chassis adjustments or setup adjustments to try and work around an issue. That they'll have the best contact patch possible. Everything they try in their simulator, which will have a stiff gearbox in it, will translate better to what they do on the track when they get there. So it was interesting hearing about that because one of Charles's comments out of Shanghai was that the Mercedes from Russell was like a dragster going onto the back straight. Like they had really good rear grip. The rear of the Mercedes was operating really well. Maybe that comment was highlighting this deficiency in the Ferrari at the time. I don't know, but it was interesting to note that, they did mention the rear end of the Ferrari was struggling.
With the upcoming regulation changes on engines for next year, what does that mean for the gearbox side of things? Do they sort of tweak that as a whole package to suit, or do they, fix it?
The gearbox is mounted separately. So usually the gearbox, it depends. So I think teams would, if you're buying components, like you would buy Mercedes engine and a Mercedes gearbox that bolt together, usually as one component. But I don't know about gearbox changes and regulations. Like at the moment they run an 8-speed gearbox. I don't know if that's mandated, to be honest. They'll just have to build something that'll mate to that engine and work appropriately. So they'll have to make changes to it, no doubt.
So you said that, so Ferrari can't change the gearbox stiffness now. They can't do anything mid-season to correct that. It's a safety concern. But obviously then next year they can rejig it.
Next year, it's a completely new platform. So, the teams will be looking in regards to everything they can do under the new regulations for the next car. So, you're taking that ground effect out of this equation as well. So that's the change in regards to the bottom of the chassis that will change. If I go back to the gearbox is actually changing to 6 gears as opposed to 8. So that is a change that's being made to the regulations as well. So, but essentially you're looking at a brand new car. And so when you look at the fact that Aston Martin have gone so heavy on getting Adrian Newey into the team, and Lawrence Stroll has actually given him share options in the business because that's how important it is to them. Adrian famously quoted as saying his job is not to follow the regulations, his job is to find the grey within the regulations and maximise that. So that's what the teams will be doing. They'll be looking at the regulations in regards to what is the standard vehicle in regards to what the regulations set out, but how they can get every last inch and every last 1,000th of a second out of the package.
This is what you can't do. This is what you can do. Everything in between, how far can we draw outside that line before they pull us up and go, no.
Absolutely, and that's why they're paid the big bucks in regards to being able to to be able to interpret the rules that still stay within the rules. And so, as we finish off talking a little bit about Ferrari as well, I mean, Suzuka really presents a challenge for Ferrari in the fact that they've had a double disqualification back in China. So, from that perspective, if you listen to any of the F1 drivers as they talk about coming second in the championship, a lot of the press will say, oh, you lost in the last couple of races. And as they always go is, well, actually, no, I lost it in race 3, 4 or 5. And it's just a case of we weren't able to make it up. For Ferrari, this is a critical race for them to make up for lost points at the start of the season.
Yeah, they probably have to be not as aggressive as they were in their car setup and fueling and so on last race. They're going to have to go maybe slightly more conservative because they'll need to maximise points from both drivers from every round onwards. So, double D disqualifications, massive. You don't win constructors' titles having a double disqualification. I haven't seen if that's been done before, but I would guess that there'd be very, very few teams who've done that before.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a massive about turn for the team. And so making sure that they're not making silly decisions, which Ferrari historically are known for sometimes doing, and just making sure that they're being consistent through their performance. I think it's lots going to go down to, again, the drivers and listening to them. Obviously, we've got some great experience from Lewis into the team now and being able to read the race and what they're doing, and then also supporting the two drivers to be able to perform to their absolute maximum.
They clearly didn't drive in the grass enough on the cool-down lap like a lot of other teams did.
I don't know if the grass helps. Much, but usually they drive along the edge of the track and pick up the rubber marbles that stick to the tyre just to add weight. So, I don't know if driving in grass and trying to get dirt to stick to your tyres is more effective. I thought rubber would be heavier.
There were a few teams doing it. I think Max might have been one of them, but I don't know who the other one was. But, yeah.
You want to pick up as much debris as you can on your tyres because it can add kilos of weight to the car to make sure you're over the weight minimum.
And as they're talking about a new compound for the tyres this year, that's part of the question around how much are you able to pick up at the end? How much are they actually degrading? And so, really how much weight is that going to add on? So it'd be really interesting for us to have a look at, probably for another episode, what this new tyre compound has meant for the championship, what the differences are, and something for us to consider.
Based on that conversation on tyre compound then, based on what we saw last weekend, will the teams be able to do a one-stop run for this track as well, or will they have to work on a two-stop strategy? Like, will the tyres get them through? Based on the fact, Huppy, you were saying this is a high downforce track, is that going to wear the tyres more with the aero setups, or will they be able to run for longer on it?
Well, the teams that run a better aero package, as in higher aero, should have less tyre slip. So in theory, they should make their tyres last longer, which is what the McLaren seems to be able to do. Last year it was a two-stop race, mostly, apart from Leclerc, who did a one-stop strategy. So I think looking at the weather, we'd probably expect it to be a two-stop. Like Christian was saying, I don't know about the tyre compounds, so expect a two-stopper. We'll see during free practice 1 and 2 and 3 what the tyre life is like anyway. I hope it's two stops because the more stops you get, the more chance there is for some undercuts, overcuts, overtaking. There might be a problem in a pit stop, so it's going to add a bit of strategy to the race.
A bit more drama.
Yeah, exactly. We haven't had enough drama in Formula One for the last week or two. Let's just chuck in a bit more.
And we need content for the podcast, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
But Lachlan, you make a really good point because you do look at China, and China, most of the teams are talking a two-stop strategy, and it became very obvious that you were only going to win China with a one-stop strategy. And so that's where the teams all then started to shift to that. It's the ones who did the two stops, and you look at that with Lewis, forget the disqualification, but, Lewis came in for that second stop where after that his race times were phenomenal, but he just wasn't able to make up the time taken up in the pits.
Yeah, Stroll was the beacon of advice on that at that race. They're all looking to Stroll to see what he did.
He helped out a few teams, that's for sure.
Mm.
Yeah, if you look at, he's actually doing well this season in comparison to lap times to his teammate as well. He's actually ahead. So we laughed at him last season, but he has improved this season.
Yeah, Melbourne was unfortunate for Fernando.
He's always had solid pace. That's right. Early in the season, like you said, we'll see how it shakes out.
Well, exactly. Just giving some credit where credit's due, though. Like,
Did anyone pick them for constructors? No one picked them for
no,
constructors?
I haven't picked them for constructors, no.
No.
People have a go at Stroll, and I see lots of memes getting around, but for any driver to compete at any sort of level in Formula One, they are one of the best on the planet. So, whatever meme you want to laugh at, like he's done a lot better than 99% of the drivers on the planet. So
To be
credit
fair,
to him.
Christian sends us all those memes, so, it's...
That's
Yeah, coming into this season, Stroll will be like, yes, there's 6 rookies or 5 rookies coming in.
And look, we discussed it in the last episode, but I mean, obviously, there's going to be a massive focus on Lukey or Liam and Yuki, as we've nicknamed them, looking in regards to the fight between the Red Bulls to see who's going to be able to stick it to the driver in regards to their performance. So, Lockie, your thoughts on Lukey or Yuki or Liam?
Okay, my thoughts would be that if Yuki can actually drive the car to a level that he believes he can, he should definitely outpace Lawson. My concern is that almost no one can drive that second car, and he might have bitten off more than he can actually chew in that. Lawson, from the other point, though, will be going all out to prove that he is worthy of an F1 seat and that he can drive the cars. So I think he'll be pushing just to actually make sure that he's in front of his other Racing Bull teammate. Now, whether he can catch and pass Yuki will be his challenge for the weekend. I think in his mind, that'll be a win if he's ahead of Yuki at the end.
I agree.
It's just going to be exciting to see what they can do because they both probably now have a lot to prove. And yeah, it's just going to be. I mean, look, I like Yuki. Yuki's been in it for a while, and he's sort of been proving himself, and he's an interesting character. Be good to see him do well, but it's just going to be interesting to see how hard it is to drive that second Red Bull car for Yuki, and also to see what Liam can do in the not so hard to drive second Red Bull car. But yeah,
Time will tell.
All
Time
eyes
will
on
tell.
them.
I mean, they'll both be pushing really hard to prove themselves to Red Bull management. Of note, this is not a track with runoff areas if you make a mistake, and there's high-speed corners on this track. So if one of those guys or anyone pushes too hard, you're going to hit a wall and do some pretty serious damage. I don't think Yuki can afford to have an accident in FP1 or FP2. I think he really has to work up, getting to know this car, being a bit more gradual in his approach. I mean, it's old news now, of course. It's happened a week ago. I know no one else in the F1 media is going to be covering the Yuki and Liam performance on the weekend, but I can assure our viewers and listeners here that we will cover it and we'll do the right thing.
You'd have to assume then that they're going to throw him out for free practice and go and put as many laps on this car as you can, just so that Yuki can get his head around it. Because if they throw him out there with 5 or 10 laps on it, he's not going to succeed.
Well, yeah, he has to do laps, but like he came out and he said that he was going to probably not go with the setup that Max has. He's going to need to find his own setup that works better for him, and he's going to gradually work his way into it in FP1. Now, FP1 is an hour or so of practice. This is not a lot of time. He's in exactly the same boat as Lawson. Like you don't have days of testing to get up to speed in this car at a high-speed racetrack with high downforce corners. Like you need to get up to speed quickly but safely, and finding a direction, for setup. You could make some changes during a session, but then they're going to have to analyze a ton of data overnight or during the day before FP2 to come out and go, right, here are the changes we'll make. Is that the right direction? And Yuki is going to want to hope that the team and his engineer work well to keep following that correct direction as that track evolves over the weekend. Because if he doesn't, he's going to be on the back foot like Liam was.
Yuki's driven the Red Bull before, hasn't he?
I believe he might have driven an older car. I don't know what version.
He hasn't in competition.
No, not yet.
So why are the engineers going to put so much extra effort into Yuki this weekend and they would have in Liam in previous weekends?
They'll give him exactly the same amount of effort, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how can Lukey drive Lukey? How can Yuki? It's hard. I've screwed myself up now. I'll be Lukey from now on.
You're cooked.
I'm cooked. That's it. How can Yuki drive that car with this? Because they're going to roll the car out with a setup. Maybe it's the same as Max's or a little bit different. I don't know. You would think it'd be the same as Max's at the start of FP1. How is he going to drive it? What feedback does he give? How does he work with the engineer to go, no, I need less front, I need more rear, I need more rotation here, whatever. If Yuki can give the right feedback and the team can help him get to where he needs to go to get performance out of that car, he'll do a good job. It just depends on whether he'll do a better job than Liam did.
Can't he just copy and paste from the Red Bull Visa Cash App car?
No.
If only it was that simple. If only it was that simple.
Let me have what they're having.
Yeah.
And don't forget, because this is just a standard race. There's no sprint race in this. So once we finish the practice sessions, it goes into Parc Fermé. So once they've done that, you cannot make any more changes to the car. So they're going to need to make their adjustments pretty quickly as they go through the practices into qualifying. And then once that's done, it's done. So I think the other part of it is for Yuki is the pressure that's going to be on him this weekend. And this is where I think it's actually, I understand why it's been done because, and this is, Yuki's home race. Honda is this is their outgoing season with Red Bull. And Lockie, I know you shared with us the picture of the livery that the team's going to be running, which we'll put up here on the screen for everyone to be able to see. And you can see the writing on the side of the car that says, "Thank you, Honda." And so Yuki's commitments through this weekend, not only is he stepping up to, the number one team in Red Bull, he's a Honda representative driver. It's his home race. And so the commitments on him for media, for hospitality, for everything else, as well as getting up to speed, getting out there and qualifying high up the grid and also performing in the race, it's the most pressure a driver can be under.
And is he driving an NSX?
Maybe to the car park.
As a private car, as a carpool.
Yeah. He'll do his donut in the car park and then suit up.
So Yuki's ability to perform on the weekend, does that talk to his ability as a driver to have technical input into the performance of the car?
Into the setup for sure. Yeah. But every race driver at this level should be able to communicate to their engineer what they need out of the car to go faster. And vice versa. The engineer needs to be able to look at their data and go, you need to brake later here. You're losing a tenth to Max there because he's getting on throttle earlier or he's taking a tighter line or whatever. So they're working together. And it's that relationship that has to come together quite quickly for him to get up to speed in that car and try to get within half a second of Max or 3/10 or 2/10 of Max.
Because Max seems to have a pretty good ability to do that.
Yeah, but that's something he's been working with his engineer for years. Like, don't forget, these guys they know each other really well. They know what they need from the car. They know how to get pace out of the car. It's a relationship. An engineer is like he probably spends more time with his relationship than he does with his girlfriend for most of the year.
And they need to understand each other. I mean, again, it's the nuances between the engineer and the driver to be able to pick up on what Max is saying, that this is actually what it means to the setup and vice versa. And I mean, you heard, there was a couple of comments in regards to Max's engineer in the last race to him. They're going, oh, that's a bit, out of the ordinary. They're used to this. They know how to talk to each other. They know how to get the right input and also output from each other.
Well, I've seen some reels where they talk about Josh Verstappen, apparently, when, even back when Max was doing karting, he'd change something in the car and just let him go out and go, did you notice anything different? What was it?
Yeah, to test him out. It's all based on feeling. Yeah. I'm keen to see Yuki's feedback. I'm hoping Yuki's a bit more blunt than Max is, like usual.
Well, he doesn't tend to blow up on the radio, so it should be pretty easy to pick up what he's saying.
Just bleep it out. It's okay.
So Yuki might be facing a fine and possible suspension for this season.
No, he won't be. He won't be in the next race.
I think
He'll be pointed out.
Bull will be happy to pay his fines if he can get that car anywhere near Max. So it'll be all eyes in the F1 world will be on Liam and Yuki this weekend.
Well, that seems to be almost a good lead-in to get our tips done, Christian, and see, everyone's talking about where they're going to finish. So maybe it might be a lead-in for the 1, 2, 3 in the polls.
Exactly.
Look, I love that you're doing my job for me, Lockie, so thank you.
Well, somebody has to.
Someone has to.
That's exactly right. So
Delegation.
All right. Well, again, as Lockie was saying, that's a really good lead into our predictions for the race. One of the things to consider as well, and before I'm going to spin my wheels for a little bit for a second here, but don't forget Sunday is also meant to be a wet race. So, we've seen that with Melbourne as to what's happened there. We've seen last year in regards to the impacts there. We're seeing Friday, Saturday being sunny, very little chance of rain, but Sunday, it's a 75% chance of rain. They're saying showers in the morning, continuing on into the afternoon. So we could see some thrills and spills here as well.
Is it Melbourne showers or just showers?
Well, it's saying regular showers in the morning, continuing on into the afternoons. So we could see quite a wet track. And again, as I said, 75% chance of rain. So that could add for some interesting viewing. And I think, I would argue that if you see Yuki and Liam near each other, we could actually see a very interesting tussle, maybe ending up off the track.
Provide some good entertainment for us anyway.
Exactly. So, well, Lockie, seeing you've decided to be first cab off the ranks, we may as well throw over to you for your predictions. So we're looking at pole, first, second, and third for Suzuka.
The pressure's on now. I think it's going to go back pole this time. I'm going to go back to Norris for pole. I think he will want redemption for last weekend's race, so I feel that he'll come back fairly strongly. I also think he's going to win the race on Sunday as well. I'm going to change it up. I think George will come second, and I think Verstappen's going to come third.
What's going to happen to Oscar?
Unfortunately, he's going to be about fifth or sixth in this one.
Why?
Wet track.
I just feel that, in the wet, not quite as good, but at the same time, too, I feel that Mercedes will be pushing up hard as well, and I feel he's just going to get squeezed out. Could be wrong, but we'll see on Sunday.
Okay, so Hubby, we'll throw to you then. Let's see how you've got in regards to the rest of...
I think I'm going to go with the form driver at the moment, and I think Oscar will get pole again. I think he's riding a bit of a wave of confidence at the moment, some quiet confidence. I'll go Oscar for the win, Lando for second, and third place is the tough one. That's what I'm not too sure on. It could be a few different cars. The Red Bull was dominant last year, but I think they've fallen a little bit behind, but Max could still do well. So I'm going to go Russell for third in this one.
Very good. Schwags, are you still doing yours or?
Yeah, look, I'm just hearing what's being said, and I'm looking at the weather as well, and I'm kind of going, well, I was originally putting Charles as pole, but I just don't think that's going to happen. Like, I think maybe they could manage that without, any race strategy.
Are you looking at the weather, or are you on Chat GTP to figure out who's going to win?
No, I don't need to cheat to do this. I can get it wrong on my own.
Chat GPT lies.
I can stuff this up on my own. Don't worry about that. Screw it. I'll go Charles for pole. Yeah, and I think you're right with the wet track. I just don't think Oscar's got the experience, because I think he was in line to catch up to Norris in Melbourne, and I think that was a shame that he didn't, but he just managed to overcook it. Probably a tricky track, so I think Oscar's not going to come first. I think Norris will come first, followed by Handsome George, and then Max Verstappen, I think. And Oscar's going to, just miss out, unfortunately.
I had a look at a few sites for their weather forecast, and one is saying 0% chance of rain. The other one's saying 16% up to 0.1 of a millimetre. So we'll have to see what happens. I don't know.
Well, I was looking at the Weather Channel, so...
Yeah, we don't know.
Based on my expertise as pundits, I probably wouldn't be rushing straight off to Sportsbet to put that.
I like that you put yourself as a pundit, Lockie.
Well, I might have to open an account and see what happens. So we'll see how we go from there. Yeah.
As a Formula One fan, I love it when it rains on a Formula One race day. Like that always mixes things up. So it will bring great racing if that happens. Ideally, to shower or rain halfway through the race would be fantastic. So,
that adds even better.
Let's hope for the best.
Well, then you get your two-stop strategy. All right. So, look, to round out the predictions, I'm looking in regards to mine. Dan, I'm actually in agreement with you. I actually think Charles is going to take out pole position for Suzuka. As we were talking about before, Ferrari have to do something in this race if they're going to have a
less
chance.
alone up there now, but thanks. I'm
not saying that I'm right, but, at least we're there together.
We are recording this for posterity for later on Monday, right? Yep.
Absolutely. And look, to that point is I'm also going to put Charles in first. So I'm going to double down, putting Oscar in at second. And then for third, and like you, Huppy, really, this could go multiple ways. I first had Lewis down, then I was looking in regards to Max. And I think with the weather, with what's going on, I'm expecting that there's going to be some biffo at the top end of the town. So I think Lewis, Max, and possibly Lando are going to take each other out. So I'm going to put Handsome George in third place for
Lewis,
race.
Max, and Lando are going to take each other out like a 3-way fisticuffs.
Why not?
Nice.
Yep.
Bring that on. Put that on Sportsbet.
This
So-
will be
so-
an interesting conversation on Monday,
House
let me
on it.
tell you.
Right. So you're picking Leclerc, Norris, and Handsome George.
No, Leclerc, Piastri, then Handsome George.
Piastri, and Handsome George, in that order.
In that order.
Okay. It's recorded. It's on tape.
Just for the listeners
Excellent.
out there, we actually record 7 copies of this, and we just change the editing.
We just
depending
picked
on
the
what
best
happens.
one to
we picked
broadcast.
the best
That's it.
I think that's wrong, Dan, because I'm winning on the tips at the minute. So there's no way we're recording
Oh.
multiples on this.
Yeah, I know. And I'm coming last, so I'm putting in a protest, an official protest. Michael, this is not right.
And look, we're going to have a special Toto episode just for you, Dan.
I have to brush up on my Austrian. I just channel my inner Schwarzenegger.
I'll be back.
Excellent. So for all of our listeners, we look forward to sharing the results of the race with you next week. To Huppy's point, we'll probably do a few laps around Suzuka in iRacing and see how much we can bin it into the wall amongst the four of us. Looking forward to a very exciting race around
My prediction for
Suzuka.
that is me. Lock.
100% chance of certainty I'll bin it into the wall.
But no, so be sure to tune in on Tuesday for our review of the Suzuka Grand Prix. Until then, we'll see you on the next lap. That's the checkered flag for this episode of The Downshift. Thanks for tuning in and hanging out with us in the paddock. If you enjoyed the ride, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you never miss a lap. And hey, if we've earned it, drop us a 5-star review. It really helps us climb the grid and reach more motorsport fans. Want to take it to the next level? Join the Downshift Pit Crew by supporting us through Patreon. You'll get exclusive content and help fuel the show to keep us pushing flat out every week. Until next time, keep it fast, keep it fun, and we'll catch you on the next lap.